Hello, this is Katie. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if it's your first time. We're going to be using Lawn Fawn Stitched Windy Backdrop, cut out of black for our card base. And this is a die that cuts out 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 for your card base as well as the stitching. So it's not just the stitching, if that makes sense. And I ended up trimming off an end of my card so that the white card base wouldn't be peeking through, so just to make it a little bit smaller. And then we're going to be doing something to the black panel before we stick it down. So I'll set aside the card base and we will put the Windy Backdrop black panel in the MISTI, and then my embossing buddy, because we're going to be doing some embossing, I'm going to give glow-in-the-dark embossing powder another try in this video. It does not turn out super great or perfect by any means. I think maybe 1 layer is fine. I just need to melt it for longer. But there's a point where on my second layer of ink and then embossing powder, it starts to look like melted frosting and it's moving around, and it's mostly in the guy on the far left, his little like skeleton x-ray looking outfit, because there's so much ink and embossing powder involved in that image, if that makes sense, because it's got more surface area. So the idea here is that we're going to have 3 costumes for the fox, and he's going to be thinking about which one he wants to be. So we'll be using the undressed fox in the middle of the card. But for now, I've done 1 layer of the Versamark watermark stamp pad, watermark ink. And then I'm using my Lawn Fawn Glow in the Dark embossing powder. And just shaking off any excess, and then we're going to put that back before we melt it. And I do spend a little bit longer. I don't want to melt it so much that what happens the second time happens, but I melt it for a little bit longer, I guess, than I did last time. What was happening was, after it was dry, I was able to rub off some of the powder, and after I had melted it, and that didn't make any sense to me, so I asked you guys for some suggestions. So I'm trying the double layer first. And so that is the first layer. I'm going to put it back in. It's probably not perfect because it warped the paper. And so stamping a second layer onto the same images on warped paper probably wasn't too exact. So they end up a little blurry, but that's okay. They are just thoughts of his that he's thinking about. And I'm using my Pressure Pal for even pressure. I will link that down below. That is a lifesaver when it comes to stamping in your platform. And then we're going to be doing a second layer of the powder. I also ordered a glow-in-the-dark embossing powder from Doodlebug's Wah today from Wow. It's a Wow brand glow-in-the-dark embossing powder, so I'm hoping either theirs is better, or I'll try next time just a single layer and maybe melting it for longer and see if that helps with the Lawn Fawn one. But I ordered that embossing powder, and that's where I was like, it was becoming soup, and I was melting his poor little skeleton costume. And so I was shaking it to make sure it was gonna dry and stop moving around. Here I'm testing out the glow in the dark. I'm trying to charge it up and show you that I have my overhead light, like the room light, still on. But I'll show you guys at the end, because I end up turning all my lights off, what that looks like. So I'm going to put this in, and then I'm going to use white embossing powder, which is one of my favorite looks. White embossing powder on black cardstock I use for a lot of sentiments on any occasion, any holiday. It's just classy, and it looks good, and it works a lot on a lot of different cards. So there is that. This is the white Judykins embossing powder I've had for 10 years, and I never seem to run out. And I'm only really ever doing a sentiment at a time, though. So we'll go ahead and melt that. It melts perfectly. Glow in the dark, I think, is just fussy as a like composition. It's a lot different than just white or black or gold embossing powder. So now I'm going to, I probably should have put down a lot more adhesive because this got pretty warped. I should have probably covered the full panel with adhesive because it started coming up on the edges later, but I just repressed on it. I can always sneak glue in there later if I need to. And then there was a little bit of white peeking out, probably because the panel was warped. So I decided to trim that off and then trim off some of the back so that there wasn't as much white peeking through. And then we'll go ahead and stamp our normal costumeless fox a couple times. The first time wasn't super crisp. Sometimes I'll get enough ink in the stamp will behave to where it's a good crisp image, and then I'll stop. But if it needs more, I will do more. So I'll be using E09, E08, and I think that said YR27 for the fox colors. I don't think the YR27 was a good choice. I can't remember what my Copic fox colors are. If you have a good combo you like for foxes, that's 3 colors, because I think 3 is good for the area of this fox. Let me know down below. The YR27, I believe, is the one I grabbed. Does not blend well. And I could have gone with E07, which I have. I just didn't think it was that much lighter. I was looking at my chart up on the wall, and it seemed a little too close to E08. I could have been wrong, but that's okay. So I just filled in. I tried to kind of blend it out a little more from the edges as well, so it didn't look too silly. And I couldn't find a tri-blend that was more of like a reddish brown. There's the tan shades, but it's not too red, and I wanted a reddish brown for the fox. So I am using the red-brown blend, which there is, I realize I just said there's no reddish brown, but the red-brown blend doesn't look very reddish to me. Like, it's not fox red, like orangey red. And there's no red-brown shades, like a darker tri-blend. So there's just this one here, which is fine. So I use that for his inner colors. Probably not the best color combo for this fox, but that's okay. And then I just grabbed the dark end of the pale pink blend, which is still a pretty light pink, for his ears. And then I'm going to be centering him. I have kind of a mishap go on here. I wasn't quite sure how to do it. I'm now realizing I probably should have used white acrylic paint, which I do have next to me in my floating cart. But that is not what I use. So I will lift him up on foam and center him, and he's thinking about which costume he wants to be. Those would have looked a lot better probably had I not stamped them twice. So here I'm going to try and use my metal ball tip tool trick, but with sparkling the Nuvo glitter, and it just doesn't really work out that well. So I eventually end up scraping up these, because you can't really see it either. And I wanted it to be clear that he was like having thoughts. I even thought about somehow getting, it would have been good to have like I think Lawn Fawn has like these outline cloud dies. I think they might have overlapped here. But those like outline clouds, if they would have fit around the foxes, the glow-in-the-dark foxes, then that could have been like his little thought bubbles. But I wasn't quite sure how to do that. Like I said, I could have used white acrylic paint. I just didn't do that. I may work more on this card after this, but for now I decided to go with my white Nuvo drops, like the opaque white. And here I'm just squeezing the bottle to get like a bubble to the surface and then dabbing it in that bubble. So I'm not using that you see in the rim. I'm actually squeezing the bottle each time to bring the liquid that's more thinner to the surface so that it behaves on my metal ball tip. And then I'm just moving it in a circle, kind of like a pen, and connecting it just so it's more obvious these white dots are there and that they're leading to his costume ideas. This is kind of what happens when I don't have a plan for a card, or I don't like case another card, or spend enough time thinking about what I want to do. So there's that. I might try and fix it with some white acrylic paint, but I am just going to add on the white accents with the Gelly Roll pen to the fox. And then to lighten him up a little more, make him a little more animated, I put 2 little white dots in his eyes so that he has, it's kind of the opposite of pupils, but, and I realized these lines probably made him look a little angry, like angry eyebrows, but that's okay. And then I added a couple dots in his eyes. It kind of animates the Lawn Fawn critters a little bit when you add in the white dot to their eyes. So there's that. I'm going to turn off all the lights and show you the glow-in-the-dark part. And hopefully we will plan out a better card tomorrow. So thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.